Good morning, gentlemen. How are we doing?
Morning.
Oh, little tired. I was in Texas twice last week and a wedding over the weekend in Houston. So just bouncing back, man.
You can see it. You had some tough days. I can see it.
Yeah, it happens, man. The world is back to mostly normal here in parts of America, and it's exhausting. You know, you aren't quite used to it anymore.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I think that was Michael's way of saying you look like crap, but I don't know if that was.
Always sharp as always, Michael.
Right. Yeah, I'll freshen up a little better next week for you, Mike.
Yeah, get some coffee. At least you got a haircut this time, Mr. Ross.
No, I just put like in here. No, it's so long. It's really bad.
Just brush.
I'm still doubting. It's not recovery is starting here a bit, but still, I have to go to hairdresser once. But let's see.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You don't see the back, you see? So that's why.
Yeah, it's okay. Well, yeah, we took a week off. Lots happened. So this is the first time we've actually taken a week off since we started the show back in November 2020, October. One of those two. Yeah. So good stuff. Glad that it was hard. Yeah, I missed you guys a lot. Like last Monday, I was kind of really sad and depressed and thinking about both of you. Yeah.
I was listening at 4 o'clock, my time, 9 o'clock. I was listening to an old podcast just to stay there because it was a difficult moment.
No, I feel it. Well, it's been a good week though. We've all been very busy, and I'm really excited because we get to actually welcome a guest on today, which we've only had about maybe 3 or 4 guests on the show that ever since we started. We have had Leo, we've had Tim, Jerome. Yeah. And yeah, so welcoming our 4th guest today. We have Cindy, who is the CEO of Orion House. So we're going to welcome her in.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning, Cindy.
Morning.
Welcome.
This is awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. Well, we've all been talking behind the scenes for a while, and just really excited to finally get to announce this whole deal of yours that just not just went public, but was recently announced. And so before we get into that big announcement, for the audience who's listening, who's watching live, who's watching the replay, want to give us a quick intro to who you are, your background, and kind of what you do in regards to Orion House as a whole.
Absolutely. My name is Cindy Diffendorfer. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Orion House. We are essentially a hospitality management company that focuses on home sharing as a business. We lease up multifamily apartment communities and then let those residents do home sharing. I started out in this industry as a host on Airbnb in 2011. So I've been in the hospitality industry in that sense, from the host perspective, for about 10 years. Most of my career was spent in and around hotels, bars, restaurants, casinos, etc. Prior to entering the real estate and hospitality sector, I worked in beer and wine, launched a couple companies there, doing keg wine, which is just draft wine for bars, restaurants, casinos, and hotels, preservation mechanisms and systems to preserve products. So I've got some patents and IoT devices in that space. And then prior to that, I was in textiles. So I spent about 10 years in juniors and young men's apparel. And that took me from South Florida to New York to LA to all over the world. So we're in about 32 countries. So that's been kind of my trajectory, but serial entrepreneur my whole life. So this is the latest and the greatest.
And I remember when you did an interview with me, actually specifically just solo on Slick Talk, and you were talking about how old were you when you were like a super genius as a kid, right?
I was
Still is.
I was smart and bored. So that meant, I did well in school up until I decided that I'd aged out of it myself. So I ultimately actually dropped out of high school and enrolled in college full time when I was 16. And then subsequently dropped out of college to start my first company. So I took really an alternative route to get to where I am today.
Well, you come in
love
the
that.
past the Elon Musk from the industry, but actually maybe Cindy is then.
I could only imagine. I can only dream so big.
Cindy, what's the most exciting piece of launching Orion House? Is it bringing the whole resident home sharing thought to market? Is it like truly blending the communities? Is it the affordable housing piece? Is it, you know, opening up travel to new locations or to new markets?
That's a great question. That's one that I have not been asked before, but I have to tell you, this is a lifestyle that really affords so much for anyone. And when I started hosting, you know, I just told you I was a serial entrepreneur, which means that it's feast or famine almost all the time. Meaning, you know, some days and some weeks and some months I'm quite flush, and others, you know, I was wondering how I was going to pay the rent. And Airbnb ended up being a mechanism for me at the time to pursue my entrepreneurial ventures. And it gave me the room that I needed to explore businesses and launch and fail. And so it's always been such a utility for me that, you know, I wanted to open that up to a broader audience because everybody should have that same opportunity. You know, I mean, if you've got an asset or you have a home or you're a renter, you know, renters pay the mortgage essentially for the property owners. They should be able to do what they want with their home within reason. And we, you know, are launching a product that really provides the infrastructure and the stability in order to make that a reality without disturbing, you know, what is otherwise a pretty comfortable living environment. So I think, you know, Michael, offering this flexible living solution to everyone, you know, or to the best of our ability, to the marketplace that wants it, you know, I think it's a great tool. I think, you know, obviously we're a for-profit company, but there's a lot of me that is driven by, you know, enhancing the quality of life and lifestyle for others. And I think this does just that.
So I've been in the industry for 6 or 7 years now. And prior to NoiseAware, I spoke with a lot of multifamily asset owners. And it was a pretty sharp hell no to short-term rentals 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Yep.
How and what has changed in the past, you know, 4 or 5 years to go from absolutely not going to touch short-term rentals to short-term rentals as an amenity?
Well, you described it perfectly. It was an absolutely not a chance in our building. You know, we don't want it here. You know, short-term rentals are our biggest enemy. Right. And it was because it was really disruptive because and it really is all over the map. Generally, travelers are really good tenants because we're the same people that live in the buildings year round. You don't just change like when you become a traveler, you're an asshole. Excuse my you're just a normal person that is now visiting another city. And so this whole idea that they're the worst, you know, was something that we came up against. You know, you had worked with us or we'd worked together for years, kind of battling the same issues. And there was a huge stigma around short-term rentals. And I think it was really largely focused on Airbnb because it was such a young platform. It didn't mean that the travelers were bad. It was just, you know, there was a bit of an unpredictable nature for how a stay would go and, you know, a disparity of expectations from the host, what they're expecting, you know, a guest to do, and from fellow residents, like how they believe that others should, you know, treat their buildings and behave in their environments. And so, you know, creating a system in my first company, Nido and Nativo, we had built infrastructure and kind of security systems in place to make sure that we didn't have issues on site. And if there were issues, that we were able to legally address them quickly to preserve the quality of living for our annual residents. And I think by instilling that security and that safety level and, you know, regulating the noise to, you know, to your product's point, NoiseAware, which is so fabulous. But only 50% of the complaints on NoiseAware are from travelers. The other 50% are residents. So that resident that's making noise at 3 a.m. is doing it all year versus a traveler that might come in for 2 or 3 nights. So, like I said, people are who they are. So whether you're a traveler or you're a resident, the behavior is what it is. And they're no better or no worse. They're all the same. And just, managing expectations of how you can behave in a residential community on a vacation stay, I think takes a lot of the issues and the friction points out of it. I think the biggest problems really exist when it goes unregulated, meaning when they're doing it when it's not allowed and they're hiding the behavior. You're exchanging keys in the lobby and you say, oh, it's a friend or it's a cousin or, whatever it is to get the guest to be able to come and use your space because it's not allowed in your lease. Then the manager, the property manager, or the owner has no ability to regulate it. And so by enforcing rules and quiet hours and limiting the number of guests, we're able to maintain the integrity of these buildings so that everybody has an enjoyable environment to live and to stay. And so I guess in a very, very long way of saying, I think everything that the industry has done has set the table for today where there's so much more commercial adoption. And so it's companies like Noise Aware and like Orion House and like Nido and Airbnb and VRBO that are putting in these, these regulations to manage that behavior. Now the property owner goes, okay, I get it. Okay, so we can do this in a stabilized fashion, and I can make more money, and my residents can make more money. They're more financially secure. My collections are more secure. We've got more money in the kitty to improve the property or add amenities or add staff. It's just a win-win-win across the board. But it's been this inertia from thousands of individuals, millions really, the hosts on Airbnb that have really been working in a unified fashion, as well as us as entrepreneurs.
I think the inertia piece is super spot on. You've got companies like Sonder who are going public at $2+ billion,
2.5,
who've been master leasing units in these multifamily buildings, and now these operators are saying, well, I want to participate. I want to participate in the upside, and so it makes total sense. And then you're right, once the automobile had streets and stop signs and seatbelts and all that, the industry became a lot safer and more widely adopted. And I think we're kind of in that phase of transitioning from the Wild West where cars are just weaving all around everybody to all right, now we've at least got lanes to stay in. We've got some safeguards, and I'm sure technology will continue to improve to continue to layer on some additional safeguards. But I think right now we're at the tipping point of mass adoption and acceptability. And it's similar to how dogs were never allowed in multifamily buildings, and then now they're an upcharge and an amenity, right? So short-term rentals can be an upcharge and an amenity for every asset owner.
What's interesting because
No, go ahead. I was just going to say it overall just comes down to the professionalization of how you operate. It's not just a air mattress in someone else's spare bedroom. Now it's a real professional asset that is operated with professionals that know what they're doing. That's okay.
Talk about dogs, right? You mentioned dogs and they heard you, so for sure. No, but just to add in here, and if you look at Europe, I think Cindy just mentioned 5 years ago things were behind, and now it seems to be accepted. I think still in Europe, in Europe it's less accepted so far, right? The whole STR vacation rental, you see individuals just put some properties on Airbnb. That's pretty it. I think it's not still in Europe. It's not as professional as I think and accepted. I think also as in the US. So I think the situation described 5 years ago, I think might be the situation now here in Europe. So I think it takes a few years before it's as professional as it is in Europe. That's just my opinion. Because still in here, it's pretty still short-term rental, vacation rentals, be okay, you see some properties, you might book something on Airbnb, but have it really professional managed or having tools out there or whatever. Well, Michael can confirm, I think your market in Europe is much smaller because in here it's not so professional so far. So I think this is what you might see now in the US. Might take a few years before you see it moving into Europe. I don't know. What's Cindy thinks from this?
I love the European market, and I actually have kind of mixed feelings about how it runs, because I feel like from a boutique operator's perspective, Europe has got a really established kind of ecosystem of these boutique stays. At least that's what I've experienced. You know, I've been traveling through VRBO or Airbnb in Europe for at least a decade. And they're normally run as like little guest houses, but it's in theory kind of the same thing. But I think one of the things that really differs between the States and Europe is the concept of multifamily just in general. Our institutional multifamily product is just very, very different than what's offered in Europe. And I don't want to say this generally, but for the large majority of certainly Western and some of Eastern Europe that I've experienced, just doesn't have multifamily inventory the same way that the States is built out. You've got a lot of condo type product where you've got individual owners and not necessarily as organized, you know, with homeowners associations where there's, you know, management boards that are taking care of the communities and, you know, they regulate it on an owner by owner basis almost, versus where here we've got really strict regimented management. And, you know, whether you're an owner or a renter, there are bylaws essentially that you have to follow, you know, in either your ownership agreement or your lease agreement. And that's coming from really an institutional level. So you've got these operators that own hundreds of thousands, in some cases millions of units, that are saying this is how the community is run. And once we adopt behavior, meaning we're gonna add these rules to the pool, we're gonna add these rules to animals, we're gonna add these rules to short-term rentals, then it's really coming from an institutional perspective versus, you know, in Europe, you've got a lot of pockets of mom and pops. You've got 6 units.
Correct.
We've got 350, 1,000 units per community. So it's just, you know, we've got a lot more density with the same owner that then gets to apply it to mass inventory. And I haven't really encountered that same type of management structure or ownership structure in much of Europe that we've explored thus far, and South America. You know, I mean, we've got the same issues down there. And some of the other issues are tenants' rights, you know, and that comes down to a state by state and country by country issue. Tenants' rights in a lot of foreign territories are so much greater than landlord rights. So you get a lot of issues with squatting in different countries. And so when a short-term renter comes in, it's hard in some cases to get rid of them. Whereas in America, we've got regulations, and again, state by state, because I know everybody sees the nightmares in California. Yeah. But to remove tenants, just like you would from a hotel, we don't have that ability in a lot of places around the world.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a really good point. And the one thing that always comes to my mind when you come to like residential hospitality, in the sense of doing these longer stays, or even just finding a solution that comes down to the rights of the operator versus the guest itself. It's always a different one, because like you said, state by state, like we literally just got done with one of our properties that had a tenant in it all year, no rent all year because of obviously COVID, but a lot of other reasons too, because everything's favored on their end. So it's always a little bit different, state by state, city by city, county by county. So it's really interesting that you bring that up.
Yeah.
Cindy, what's the like 5-year, 10-year vision? Like when you launch with 1,500 units and become, you know, a top 10 operator in the country, like what's the big vision 5 years from now if you're already starting from such a high level?
Well, I love that you say that, but remember, this is now 6 years in work. So
yeah.
Just out of the gate, you know, I mean, I had a lot of pre-existing relationships like with you folks here that set us up for success really fast. This is a long time coming. That's like, you know, every entrepreneur has a bunch of failures. So I've got a lot of them that got me, you know, to hopefully this great success. But I think, you know, for the long term, we really want to see commercial adoption of this product, you know, not only through our own company, but through all of our partners. And we do collaborate, you know, domestically with other competitive operators, because I think there's plenty of room in this pool for many. And, you know, what we were talking about before we even got on here, it was the inertia behind the entire industry and the hosts themselves and the travelers themselves is what is making this such a massive success, because everybody wants it. Like done right, it's a win-win-win. So we look to scale obviously as quickly as we can within reason. But I do want to take this business internationally, because my philosophy is, why not? Especially, a lot of the international markets that we're going into will be through joint ventures or licensing partnerships, to take this business model and all of the tools that we're integrating into it and applying it to different marketplaces and different buildings all over the world. In that respect, we should be able to scale. Like, let's take that infrastructure and that, the best practices of how to create a great ecosystem and kind of this harmonious solution between long-term renters and or, condo owners and the short-term renter. So we look to go international relatively quickly. Europe is obviously very interesting to us because we love it there and we have a passion for travel. That's why we got into this business in the first place. But there's a lot of opportunity. So that is, the international marketplace is next. We're starting here, obviously, because this is our backyard. But we do want to go international as quickly as we can.
My question would be for you. So this inventory that you guys are starting out with is pretty unique. So can you describe, I guess, maybe not like pros and cons, but more of the uniqueness behind what you're about to do with these 10 buildings across the country right now?
Yeah, so this particular inventory is coming from secondary and tertiary markets. It's currently kind of underutilized and depressed hotel inventory that is being repurposed for multifamily housing that is short-term rental friendly. So right now, the properties are sitting at lower than market occupancy rates. In fact, the markets are just generally depressed, both from COVID and from travel behavioral trends that have shifted. And there's a lack of affordable housing as well in these markets. So we said, why is this inventory sitting dormant when it could actually provide housing and still also be on the supply side for hotels? So that's what we're really doing, is we're taking, call it 50% of any building, that the 1,500 units or 1,600 units is half of that inventory. So, there's an equivalent amount that's staying as hotel product, and it's just being repurposed as primarily residential, which allows short-term rentals. So we're taking those hotel rooms, converting them into micro apartment units and leasing them up on an annualized basis. And then those renters are then able to do short-term rentals as well. So it's twofold.
Are there any additional components to these buildings, like restaurants or coffee shops or co-working, or?
They all have a full hotel amenities, F&B, pools, outdoor spaces, common areas, business centers, etc. Some will have, or some have more real estate than others, meaning we've got some, kind of garden style communities as well as towers. So it's a mixed bag in terms of like the overall square footage per property, but they all have, food and beverage like you would find in a hotel traditionally.
Well, Michael said in the co-working, we discussed it a few times in the show, right? You're planning there as well. So because of course it's just like you see the people moving, digital nomads are become more and more popular. So you're planning some things there as well.
Yeah, so we're not going to have traditional co-working in the sense that we're going to allocate like a floor to cubicles. We will have phone booths and workspaces, and that's just as an amenity. So we won't be a co-working provider in the sense that we will be taking in outside subscribers or users, but it will be an amenity that's provided to all of the existing residents.
Yeah, it's super cool. If you need a change of scenery or person you're living with, you need some space for some quiet and get some work done. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I love it.
Yep. Absolutely.
Well, and I want to ask, so like with half of the inventory being hotel and you have it operating as a hotel, what's going to be the difference when it comes to the like turnover with guests? And because you're mostly going to be focusing on tenants, but those tenants are going to have that ability to do a home share option. So what do you think that's going to look like when it comes to the actual tenant that's leased up into the building? What do you think that behavior is going to be like when it comes to like the stay, all that type of stuff, that amount of times that they open up their calendar? What do you think that's going to be?
Well, the big thing here is that people that rent in our communities are coming there specifically to do home sharing. So we don't expect to have many residents that are, really stationary. Some of the markets lend themselves more than others to full-time and professional hosts, of which, we have a big wait list of just pro hosts that want to rent in our buildings. And so I think it's going to be a mixed bag. Our wait list really is almost 50-50 of primary residents that are going to use this as their main home and professional hosts that are going to be doing this, to make extra money. So they need to yield in excess of what their core expenses are. And so it's really going to go building by building. Now, I will tell you, we do revenue management on behalf of our residents and provide them a bunch of tools so that they know when the high volume or high revenue days are, and when it's good for them to travel in other markets that might be much cheaper for them to go and experience while they can yield more revenue on their own home. So we have a lot of programming kind of in place to stimulate travel, so that our residents do get to earn the most amount of money. For those that are not professional hosts, if they're primary residents, we're going to say, look, Memphis is on fire this weekend, or Nashville's on fire this weekend. Here's all the things that are going on. Average daily rates are $500 or $750, whatever it is for these big events. However, Chicago is a great place to go right now. ADRs in Chicago are $80 or $100. Like, let's get you to Chicago and let's help you make an extra $1,000 in Nashville or Memphis. So, providing them with the tools and also the staff and support to be able to facilitate that. I know a lot of people are nomads at this point, where they're doing a month here and a few weeks here and, just really moving around and saying, wow, what a great deal in Sonoma. Let's go to Sonoma. I've always wanted to go. And now that working remote is giving them that flexibility, they're almost city hopping just because they can, right?
Yeah.
Sounds like you might be a nomad here soon, Cindy, huh?
Oh, God. Well, I've been a nomad for a long time. I spent part of this year living on my boat. So I know how to live with very little. But giving them that opportunity to explore, giving them the tools to make it a reality financially. We're partnering with Amtrak to provide train solutions and bus solutions, especially for people that are trying to benefit the most in cash. They might not want to spend their money flying or driving. So we want to have different mechanisms to get them out and about so that they are able to preserve that upside as much as possible.
If I'm correct, because Michael asked you, okay, your 5-year plans, I guess. But if I look at what you're offering, I think you have two solutions. One is the full managed one, and the one is not the full managed one. Where you see the growth? Is it in the full managed one, or?
That's a really good question. Look, I think to scale, it's going to come from a software and kind of business trade practices licensing deal and branding, which would be the unmanaged solution to a small degree. Maybe just doing the back office for them, but not being the physical bodies on site. That's what allows us to really scale. And so I would guess that would be the vehicle for the most amount of growth in terms of unit count. Our upside really is when we are, we've got a multi-pronged revenue stream. So we do get paid a couple different ways, but where we see the most amount of profitability is when we have, a vertical business where we're not only the back office and the technology solution, integrated with all of our partners, but while we're also the bodies that are on site working on the conversion, doing the lease up, and getting the right tenants in there, and then also getting them onboarded into the home sharing program. So that's where we really see our numbers go way up, because, there's still an obstacle to get people to let others in their home. It still is an emotional, it's an intellectual thing that, like, is it really worth it? Is it really worth $200 or $300 a night, for me to risk somebody staying in my house, or, to be displaced? Oh, I don't want to be uncomfortable. I don't want to stay at my boyfriend's or my parents or whatever it is. Getting them to start on that behavior is such a critical juncture for volume and profitability, because then they get into it and they go, oh my God, I just made $600 and okay, now it's not so bad. I don't really mind somebody else using my toothpaste and sleeping in my bed. Okay, how can I do it better? And then they get into hosting, and it really becomes almost like a people business. So if you can get your host to really adopt, like our tenants to really adopt the behavior, they push it forward so much more. So, having that fully integrated solution is where we see our most, the most amount of value add, especially when you still need, the resident adoption. And we think this is a huge marketplace. There's, 7 million individual hosts, I think, at this point around the world on platforms, give or take. If I'm wrong, you guys please correct me.
I think that's pretty accurate.
Yeah. You just count them, Will? Yeah.
But about that,
you just count them, right? Quickly.
Yeah, I just counted in my head.
About 7 million. So think about how many people are on the planet. Like, we think this is a really big, mature market, but it's just getting started. I still very much believe it's in its most nascent stages. And, by enabling residents and empowering them to do this themselves, they can carry it with them wherever they go. Now, our objective as Orion House is that they stay in our network, right? Like, the reason why we want to manage as many buildings as we can as possible is that when you move out of Chicago and you're looking for a place in St. Louis and you gotta love staying there, because I like, the flexible housing, I like the Airbnb or VRBO portion of it. What do you have in St. Louis? We've got a property for you there, no problem. We've got a property anywhere, or we can refer it to, our managed partners, where we say we don't manage the building, but these are partners of ours, and keep them in our affiliate network.
But you see, as the guys knows, I'm a big believer of the membership academy. You see it also from the STR space, or for your travelers to come into like a membership, and you can stay in the Orion houses, and you just have a discounted fee or unlimited stay, etc. in different places.
Yeah, we offer that to our residents, certainly. Okay. And then we've got a rewards program that we'll be launching shortly after this initial launch for travelers. So we do want to keep people in our ecosystems. We want to leverage, especially, so, in multifamily, there's always about 5% of inventory that goes unleased. That inventory will be fully furnished and will also be monetized on a short-term rental basis as dedicated kind of quote-unquote hotel units. We're going to use those units both for our residents and give them, free weekends for their family or whatever to come and stay, and also for shoulder nights. We'll tack on, or give them early check-ins and late checkouts where available. So we really do want to add value. Like, obviously those are all tools for us to monetize, but there's a lot of other ways that we win goodwill with our residents, with our travelers, and we've got that currency, that extra hotel room. That we can give out and use that, for our benefit. So that's both for our residents to stay in our ecosystem. If we've got an extra room, on either end of their trip, we'll say, hey, do you guys want to, to extend your stay? It's on us. Or if you're in a city and there's an Orion House there, we'll let you call us for a day pass. You can go use those amenities, go to the pool, use the office center, whatever it is that they want. But we're very much into giving back within reason. And making sure, that we're properly optimizing our communities and filling them up and, getting them used, while still, managing the amount of usage so that we don't have, wild raging parties.
Yeah. We can help with that. But so Cindy, you touched on 2 points that are really interesting. One, like getting people over the hosting hurdle. For a lot of people, it's like, I don't want somebody sleeping in my bed. Yeah. But if you think about the flip side, like, have you ever slept in someone else's bed, or have you ever slept in a hotel room, right? Like, where thousands of people have slept on that bed. So it's a simple mind shift, but as soon as the money starts coming in, it really helps.
It shifts faster.
Yeah, for sure. There's a big incentive to do it. And then the other side is professionals do a great job of knowing exactly what you're walking into and making sure it's clean and everything, well designed. But some of the best stays I've ever had were with single hosts, because they have the time to think about my unit and the traveler and asking questions. Hey, what are you doing in town? Oh, I want to do a tour of the breweries. Great. Then you bring them a variety 6-pack of beers so they can try them when they check in, right? There's little things that you can do as a single host that you can never do as a professional, profitably at scale. So it's bringing the best of both worlds there. So it's awesome.
And we do source a lot of information from our community hosts and just say, what are you guys recommending right now? Where are the bars and restaurants? We also have our corporate events manager goes out into the marketplace and talks with local restaurants and bars and entertainment venues to try and create relationships with them, if it's just a referral thing or if you get some type of discount for staying on property. So we're sourcing both from our residents and then also from surrounding businesses. And that's kind of an ongoing thing. And that, you know, I mean, especially when new restaurants will open, you know, we've seen them coming to us saying like, hey, can we do something on your communities? And we'll do a pop-up, you know, barbecue truck or whatever, so that they're getting kind of that cross marketing. And we do that, like you said, you know, from a commercial perspective to add value. But then you get really the intimate thing where you go, oh, Jeff's my favorite bartender down at the brewery. Like, go see him because I'm there every Friday and Saturday, right? So we get the real localized flavor from an actual resident who sits at that bar and talks to that person or goes to that yoga class. And then we also get it from a corporate perspective where we say, look, we want to add as much value as we can. What can we do together? You know, we've got 700 residents in this building. How can we put something together with y'all? And normally we find some interesting ways to do it.
That person, I don't think I've met them, but it sounds like they have one of the best jobs in the world. Like they just get to go out and socialize and talk about the best bars and restaurants and eat at them and make recommendations.
He also does some of our like philanthropic stuff. So it's really like, it's more kind of lifestyle perspective, and also, you know, resident adoption of the amenities. So we stimulate a bunch of different activities on site. We also do, you know, the charitable days and fundraisers and give backs on rent payments, for example. So if you want to donate to a charity, we do that. He organized kind of all of that stuff. So totally on the fun front, I think it's all fun. But yeah, he gets to go sample markets and say, this is the best of the best. He gets to eat everywhere and drink everywhere and go to listen to every live music show and say, these are my people and we love this. And, you know, he spends about a week in every city and like just running around. And then we also do a lot of on-site programming. So the stuff that we go out into the community and touch, then we ask them to come back and do stuff with us. But yeah, it's a good job. It's Diego.
I was gonna say, can I switch? Does that happen? Can we switch jobs?
He's really good at what he does, but you know, everybody wants to make a change sometimes. So
I just playing. That's awesome though. That's super cool. Yeah. I love that too, because it really like goes into the hospitality aspect. It's not just sign a lease, pay your rent, you know, go on Airbnb. You're really focusing on making it I even remember when we were talking about the Nido thing, like just the overall, you're shaping it to get over those hurdles. So yeah, someone's gonna be staying in your bed, but like there's a certain spot for all your stuff and all this other, like you're gonna have professional linens and laundry and housekeeping and all this is gonna go into it to get over that hurdle of the unprofessionalized, the what do I do if a guest, you know, I have family photos or I have this, I have that, like it gets rid of that barrier. And I love that. I think it's really nice. So
it also provides stability. Like your traveler knows what they're getting. You know, yeah. I love the unique experience, but I also look at kind of the photos and I'm like, there's an awful lot of colored linen in there, meaning like, is it not that clean? Because you know, when it's bright white, like
yeah.
The other stuff might just not be getting washed.
Yeah. You're basically bringing the Airbnb tagline of live like a local to reality, right?
Yeah.
Like you're helping them accelerate and know the local spots and know the local, like live in a local building. And it's really cool.
And a lot of what we do, I want to put out there, like, you know, obviously, again, we're for profit and we look at all the different ways that we can maximize our income and revenue potential. But much of the added value that we do is at no cost, right? So all of these like relationships we set up with different vendors, it's not like we're running a big concierge desk where everything is $100, where it's like, I can do that myself. Thank you. Mm-hmm. I can Google on TripAdvisor and I can find a place that I can go and pay money. And so we try and do stuff so that we really add value, or we get discounted rates so that we can pass that on to our guests and to both our residents and our travelers. So a lot of, you know, especially Diego's objectives, but also, you know, every piece we look at, you know, and Michael can attest to this, you know, we squeeze our vendors really hard so we can pass on value. And that is because we want people to adopt whatever it is, the technology, the restaurant, the food, the classes, anything. And, you know, sampling historically is the best way to get a user. You know, that's why you test drive cars. It's one of the only products you get a test before you buy. You don't get a pre-live in a house. You have a car.
Well, you do now at the Ryan House. You can
Here,
stay in a unit that's just like yours. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we always use the car industry as an analogy because, like, why does multifamily not behave like that when that's the single largest check that everybody writes every month? Like BMW, the minute that you even sniff a BMW, they are all over you for life. They're all over you for life. Like, you are never going to get away from that brand. Especially, forget about it when you buy one. You're in the ecosystem. You're everything. You could whatever you want. Just make sure that when you get a new car, it is with us, right? But we want to very much be that same attitude. Like, we want to be able to provide the quality of living, the revenue opportunities, the lifestyle, so that when you move, you still want to live with a Ryan House. Like, I loved all the perks. I don't want to lose my perks. Well, where are you next? And that's where, like, we want to keep having them come back, but we also want to take care of that resident because, again, we're the most important check that they write every single month. And as a renter, traditionally, you get an invoice every month and it's like, pay your rent. And when you're 3 days late, you get a fine. It's just totally backwards in terms of how people approach renters.
Yeah. It's going to be exciting times. I'm excited to see it all play out. And I'm just thinking, like, we can go on for like hours on this episode. I know we could, but just like the overall aspect of your rent's a set rate, but you home share it most of the time. Your rent is most likely going to be covered, and then you're just going to be making profit actually. So you're not even writing that fat check anymore. You're making $600, $1,000 a month. So I think it's a really good win, especially if you're. There's all these certain aspects that go into it and different variables, but I think it's really exciting, and I'm excited to watch this 10 buildings signed turn into 100 buildings signed by that. It's gonna be good stuff.
We're hiring. Awesome. If anybody needs.
I'll put an application in the comments.
I'm curious. In fact, I don't even know if we put our hiring section on the website, but if anybody's listening to this and watching is interested, let us know, please. Especially in Jackson or Memphis or Tulsa or Nashville or Orlando.
Diego's already got the cool stuff. That one's taken.
There's only one of him though, and there's a lot of cities, so we do need other people to actually help us source, fun stuff to do on a dime.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, Cindy, I just want to say thank you for being on the show with us this morning, getting to join in and kind of talk about the Ryan House model and, of course, the announcement today. It's really exciting. I'm really excited to watch it play out. So thank you again.
Thank you all so much. I really enjoyed it. Appreciate your time.
Thanks.
All right. See you guys next week.
See ya.